Good morning, everyone, and welcome from the premises of the European Medicines Agency here in London to today's virtual press briefing on our new Priority Medicine Scheme, or PRIME. My name is Maria-Agnes Heine, and I'm the head of EMA's Communication Department. You have already received some background information from us on PRIME, and today also our press release. Please note that all these materials are under embargo until 11 a.m. UK time today. Today, I'm delighted to have with me Professor Guido Rasi, EMA's Executive Director, who will present the agency's vision and objectives for PRIME. Also, Zaid Frias, the head of EMA's Human Medicines Research and Development Support Division, who will describe the key features of PRIME and the eligibility criteria. Dr. Thomas Salmonson, the chair of the Committee for Medicinal Products for Human Use, or CHMP, who will describe the key role of CHMP in PRIME and the perspective of the European Medicines Network. And finally, Professor Hans-Georg Eichler, EMA's Senior Medical Officer, who will put PRIME into context and explain how it fits with other EMA initiatives, including adaptive pathways. We will then open the floor to questions and will wrap up latest by 11 today. Please also note that Professor Rasi will have to leave directly after his introductory remarks because he will be traveling abroad. I will now hand over to Professor Rasi. Guido, please.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I'm very excited to introduce you PRIME. PRIME stands for Priority Medicines, and the PRIME scheme aims to address patient priorities. But where do we stand today with medicine development? I think we still see too many patients in the desperate need of having better treatment, having more effective treatments, and not yet benefiting of those tremendous potential that can be given by the scientific advancements. And what can we do as regulators to enable innovation, to bring faster, cutting-edge medicine to patients? Well, our experience coming from the scientific advice shows that 2 out of 3 development plans are inadequate. Inadequate basically to produce the evidence we need, to produce all the data we need to assess the quality, safety, and efficacy of medicines. And as a consequence, many of these very promising medicines fail to reach the patients. Resources for medicines are wasted, research and development costs increase, and more importantly, patients are enrolled in useless clinical trials. And this is particularly true for those developers who has less regulatory experience, less regulatory capacity, such as academia and small and medium enterprise. And here is where PRIME can make a difference. With PRIME, we basically will foster better planning of the resources, better planning of the development, and basically to enable a higher level of quality of data, the high level of data we need to assess medicine and to enable innovation to reach the patients. Since I took the office, I set patient priority as our highest priority. And today, we are delivering on that promise with a concrete plan.
Thank you very much, Guido. And now over to Zaid, who is going to explain the eligibility criteria and the key features of PRIME. Zaid.
Thank you, Maria-Agnes. Ladies and gentlemen, PRIME is also about bringing medicines earlier to patients, and also about how the European Medicines Agency, the Member States, and the European Commission has joined efforts in support of the development of priority medicine. So what's a priority medicine? Well, for a start, it will be a medicine that will be addressing an unmet medical need, but it will also be a medicine for which at that stage, very early on, the company has already been providing compelling evidence that it can bring a major therapeutic advantage. So you will benefit as a patient, you will benefit as a parent, as a relative, or a close friend of someone with a very serious illness, but you will also benefit as a healthcare professional that may be in daily practice faced with limited or sometimes no treatment options available for those patients. So why will you benefit from PRIME? Well, for a start, PRIME support is exclusive to those medicines of unmet medical need and for which there will be a major therapeutic advantage. So really, it's targeting patients for which the treatment is the most important. PRIME will optimize the development plan as well as accelerate the evaluation of those medicines, all in an effort to bring it earlier to patients. And third, but not least, PRIME is all about well-designed clinical trials in an effort to generate robust, high-quality data, not only on the efficacy of the product in that particular indication, but very much also on the safety. Now, PRIME will obviously have very clear benefit also to all companies. And I'm saying all companies because indeed PRIME is targeting big pharma, it's targeting small and medium enterprises, as well as the academic sector that are currently developing medicines in those particular unmet medical needs. So we are very much inviting those companies to apply for PRIME. Once granted PRIME, the EMA will then step up regulatory and scientific support to those products throughout their development and, very importantly, in a proactive manner. So indeed, for each PRIME product, there will be the assignment of an EMA dedicated contact point. This EMA dedicated contact point will be there to facilitate interactions but also direct queries. There will be an early appointment of a rapporteur. The rapporteur is one of the two scientific experts from the committees that will be actually taking the lead in the evaluation of that marketing authorization application upon submission. And in fact, the early appointment will allow them to build up knowledge that will be beneficial to be able to accelerate its review upon submission. There will be also a kick-off meeting organized between the company and the best available experts in the field to discuss with the company the development plan as well as the submission strategy. And as part of such a meeting, there will be also an agreement at which key milestones in the development scientific advice will be requested. You will be keen to hear that the EMA has also decided as part of PRIME to provide an extra support to small and medium enterprises as well as the academic sector, and this very much because they are known to be key drivers and main drivers of innovation in Europe. That's why we will be allowing SMEs and academics to come even earlier into PRIME. So now what do we mean with even earlier into PRIME? Well, where the vast majority of companies will be submitting their eligibility to PRIME at proof of concept stage, which is just before engaging in confirmatory clinical trials, for SMEs and academics, we will offer them the possibility to submit the PRIME eligibility request already at the proof of principle stage, so just before they are engaging with exploratory clinical trials. And basically, the idea is that we will be able to reinforce and step up scientific and regulatory support to those companies to move easier from the proof of principle stage to the proof of concept stage. Then, I would like to say that we strongly believe that PRIME therefore brings major benefits to patients, to healthcare professionals, and to the developers. And that's why we will also, after the PRIME launch today, also be publishing monthly statistics. So not only on the uptake of PRIME, but very much on its success. And we will actually provide details as well on the active substances that will be granted PRIME. So I suggest that you very much look forward to the PRIME space. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Zaid. And now, Thomas, I would like to invite you to give us more details on the CHMP role.
Thank you very much. Good morning also from my side. I've been personally involved in this from the very beginning, and I must admit I've been very much looking forward to this day because we sincerely believe in the potential here, and today we go live. So that's extremely important. It's time to deliver. And obviously, CHMP will play an essential part and is fully committed to do so. So we're really looking forward to it. As Guido and Saida said, it is built on existing tools. It's linked to accelerated assessment. But there are particularly three aspects that I would like to highlight that I find is very important in PRIME. And the first one, obviously, is the scientific advice. Scientific advice, as Guido outlined, has been very successful in supporting drug development. The regulator's role here is obvious. We're here to promote, protect, and promote public health, and adequate trial designs, adequate drug development is certainly in the interest of patients participating in trials and future trials, and in the society at large. So the scientific advice component here is extremely important. The other one mentioned by Saida is the early appointment of rapporteur. We have, as you probably know, have had a rapporteur system that is stays with a product from the first assessment and then throughout the development plan or development phase. And personally, when I was the rapporteur at CHMP, I was rapporteur for some product for 12 years post the first approval. We're now extending that. In fact, we're starting even earlier. So the link between a rapporteur and an individual probably exists from early development. And I believe that's very, very important. And of course, the rapporteur is not only the link between CHMP and the development plan. The rapporteur is also the link with other committees that are involved here, such as the PDCO, the COM, the CAT, if this is an advanced therapy product, and the PRAC. So CHMP member here, the assigned rapporteur, will be the link to the entire system. And the third component, and I know Hans-Jürgen will talk to that more, is that PRIME should not be viewed in isolation. PRIME is a regulatory support scheme, but it should not be viewed alone. It must be viewed in the context of other initiatives. We have, as you probably know, an extensive parallel advice exercise with other stakeholders, HTA bodies. We try to involve that in to payers. We involve patients in this. So that is, of course, an important feature that we will bring in here. And we hope the rapporteurs here will initiate these discussions even more intensely than we do today. We have an updated use of conditional marketing authorization that we will link in here. We have, for a long time, have had what we call a life cycle, lifespan approach to drug development. In other words, it's not only important to assess the product up to its first approval, but then it's equally important to make sure that you have rational drug development post that point. And we have all sorts of tools in ensuring that that is going to happen. And in those initiatives includes also not only using randomized clinical trials, but seeking other sources for information from so-called real-world data, whatever that may be. So there is a link to other initiatives, and again, Hans-Jürgen would talk to that, the adaptive pathways, HTA collaborations, the patients initiatives in bringing in patients in many of the activities we have here, the registries initiatives, etc. So I think I'll leave it there, and perhaps it's time for Hans-Jürgen.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Yes, and Hans-Georg, I invite you to probably talk a little bit about other initiatives that and their linkage with PRIME.
Thank you, and good morning again. You have just heard from my colleagues that we take very seriously this goal of bringing promising medicines to patients in a timely fashion, because we understand that there are patients waiting out now, not in 5 years. So you may ask yourself, how does this PRIME initiative fit in with other initiatives and tools that we have? Well, in my personal view, PRIME is the last piece in the jigsaw of initiatives and regulatory tools that we have here at the agency. I have no doubt that PRIME will be successful in bringing promising targets to patients as soon as is reasonable and is possible. But the story, of course, doesn't end here. As Thomas just alluded, once a drug is on market, we have to continue learning about how it performs. We have to understand how it is being utilized appropriately or inappropriately. We have to understand where there may be the potential, that is, the treatment eligible population should be widened over time. And that is exactly what the adaptive pathways concept is looking at. Also, we recognize that we are not the only decision makers as regulators in the healthcare environment. There are other decision makers, there are others who assess the drugs from different perspectives, that is called health technology assessors, and then there are payers who will ultimately decide about access, and we have to interact with those. So, as I say, this is the last piece in our jigsaw, and we have set it up in a way to ensure that it is best in terms of synergies and it is most complementary to the other tools and initiatives that we have ongoing.
Thank you very much, Hans-Georg. We will now be taking questions from the floor. To ask a question, please click on the raised hand icon in the Adobe Connect menu bar. And as you can see us, but we cannot see you, please speak clearly and loudly when you are given the floor. And please introduce yourself, first giving your name and affiliation. Okay, the first one is Nuala Moran. Nuala, please go ahead.
Oh, good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking my question. It's Nuala Moran from BioWorld Today. And I just wondered if you could say how much faster you think that the regulatory process will go, and also what your what your hopes are in terms of increasing approval rates, please.
Said, can you take this first question, please? Yeah.
Yes, thank you for the question. To be honest with you, as we haven't launched Prime, or have no experience with the Prime launch itself, it's difficult to predict exactly how much faster the marketing authorization will be granted. So in that sense, we believe we will have to gain experience with the uptake and see how it develops. What I can say, though, is that Prime is actually shortening or bringing medicines earlier to the patient in different ways. So one is, as I mentioned earlier, the optimization of the drug development plans and the drug development itself. The other way is, of course, very much the acceleration of the evaluation itself. And then finally, we have also received confirmation from the European Commission that they will be willing to take the decision-making step also in a faster way. So overall, we are confident that there will be earlier access in any case, as opposed to medicines that have not gone through the Prime scheme. But at this stage, it will be difficult to predict exactly how much time this will be.
Yes, please. Hans-Georg wants to add something, please.
Yes, an interesting question. Will the approval rate go up? Now, there is nothing that Prime can do to rescue a molecule that is not beneficial. If the molecule doesn't engage the target it is meant to and therefore has no efficacy, if the molecule has a nasty adverse event that was known at the outset, then Prime will not rescue it. But can we raise the approval rate? Possibly yes, because what we can avoid is avoidable errors on the part of the company. And we have experience with that, and there is actually some prior knowledge, because we looked at the approval rate of those compounds who came for scientific advice and followed it, and compared it to those who did not. And it shows that there is an increase in the approval rate. We're happy to send you that material if required.
Thomas, please, you wanted also to complement.
Yes, and this may be unnecessary, but everyone knows that we've been having something called accelerated assessment for quite some time in the legislation, and that allows us to put high priorities on an individual application and shorten the timetable. And as Saida said, there's also a shortened decision phase involved in this. But cutting a month here or a month there isn't really a big gain. It's valuable, but it's not the big gain if you look at the time from development until a product actually reaches the patients. the big wins, we're convinced, are going to happen in the development phase and an adequate design of clinical trials, and in involvement other stakeholders that are also part of the decision making before a product reaches the patients. So it is a way of recognizing where can we get the big gains, hopefully the big gains. Now, how big those will be, it's impossible to answer. It will depend very much on the individual product that we will have in front of us, of course. And for some, they may be very limited, but just preparing for the accelerated procedure, getting everyone on board will be of value. For others, I'm convinced that there will be a very significant gain in time when it comes to the access to patients.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Now the next question is from Victoria English. Just a second. You can speak, Victoria.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. The first one is, what are the differences and similarities between this and the breakthrough therapy designation at the FDA? Second question is, does the EMA have the capacity, well, let me rephrase the question and make it slightly nicer. How many of these procedures could you theoretically do in any given year? And then the other thing that puzzled me was Dr. Razi's reference to inadequate trial designs. He said 2 out of 3 are inadequate. And I find that surprising after all these years that is still the case. And I was wondering whether you could just give us a slight insight into where the problems may be.
Okay, let's start with Zaid for the first 2 questions.
Yes, thank you very much for this question. Well, I think for a start, these different schemes are addressing the same need of in terms of limited treatment options. So globally, different authorities have taken different measures to target the same kind of issue in terms of treatment options. In terms of the PRIME, as we said, it's very much about reinforcing an early dialogue and providing an earlier rapporteur, and therefore being able to optimize the development and as well the acceleration of the evaluation. These are similar to the breakthrough, even though, of course, based on very much different regulatory requirements. So we wouldn't say that they are completely converging. Then in terms of how many procedures we are expecting, well, again, we have said it's not easy to know how many companies are actually ready to submit, but we have been looking at the scientific advice uptake as well as accelerated assessment under the legal frameworks before launching PRIME, and we believe that we can expect around 100 eligibility requests per year. How many of those will be successful is a bit similar along the conversation we had earlier. This is very much difficult to predict, depends on the therapeutic area, depends on the evidence that is being generated with those products.
Thomas, you may want to, at least initially, respond to question 3, please.
Well, if I may continue on question 2 first, and then I'll say something on 3. I think, Victoria, your question relates to what's the capacity that we can take on. And Said, of course, mentioned the expected number of applications. Unfortunately, of course, there is not that many development programs that actually meet both the unmet need criteria and the very strong potential to fulfill that. So cutting down the 100, I'm convinced that there will be fewer than so. And obviously there is an impact on workload here, but we have not defined a number saying that we can take 20 or 30 per year, because of course the public health aspect here must be considered and the importance of supporting the development. So we've not locked ourselves into a certain number, but very personally, I think we have to be prepared that a rather large number of the eligibility or the application we will see will actually turn down. I think we have, that's at least my expectations, because I expect that we we'll see quite a number of applications that will not meet the requirements. But time will tell if I'm right or wrong. To go back to Guido's figure, and Guido, as you heard, is going on a long journey and had to leave. I'm not sure, I have to be honest, I don't know where he got the 2 out of 3. I'm sure that's from statistics that is derived from the Scientific Advice Secretariat, and I'm sure that that is correct. But exactly how it was defined, I'm not sure. It is clear that in the scientific advice business, and you're well aware that we do about 500 per year, Victoria, on this, there are in many cases situations where we do find the development proposals not optimal, if I put them that way, and that where we actually believe that we can come in with helpful suggestions that would mirror the requirements we will have later on. But the exact 2 out of 3, I have to admit, I don't know exactly how that was defined and how that was assessed.
I think Hans-Georg can probably explain this a little bit more because it comes from our scientific advice.
So you're asking, he used the word inadequate. And we have to be aware that this is not the same as beauty. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But whether a clinical trial protocol is adequate or inadequate is not in the eye of the beholder. It is, under the current legislation, it's in the eye of the regulator. And if a regulator says, no, I'm afraid this design of this study is inadequate, we want to see something different, then by definition, it is a suboptimal design, as Thomas just said. And we had looked in the past, this is a couple of years ago, and as I said, we can provide that information from published literature. We have looked at what comes in and what was deemed by CHMP members, Scientific Advice Working Party members, as adequate versus inadequate. Then you come to a rather high figure. Whether that is that some companies try to push the envelope or whether there are other reasons, we can only speculate.
Thank you very much. Is there any more question? Okay. Ian Schofield. You can go ahead, Ian.
Well, hi, thanks. It's Ian Schofield here from Scrip. I had a couple of questions. One was on the ability of smaller companies and academics to apply at an earlier stage. And I think when this was first announced, there was some consternation expressed by bigger companies that they were being excluded from this earlier access. And I wondered if you'd had any more feedback on that and whether companies have accepted that this would be much more of a benefit for smaller companies. And the other one was a point that was raised about the decision-making procedures. You said that the Commission had given you an indication that they could reduce the time that they take to make their decision after the CHMP recommendation. Have you got an idea of how much shorter that time period might be?
Thank you very much, Ian. Zaid, can you perhaps start responding?
Yes, thank you very much, Ian, for this question. In fact, we have indeed, following the public consultation, very much taken on board the comments that were received and actually reinforced wordings in the paper, basically to confirm that we are committed to provide further or extra support to SMEs and the academics sponsors. This is based on long experience with the SME regulation as well as the support provided by the SME office, in which it has been seen that these companies typically have more difficulties to move from a proof of principle stage to a proof of concept. And therefore, very much PRIME is aimed at tailoring also the support to these actors. We believe that that they are in more need of regulatory and scientific support than, for example, big pharma. So wording has been reinforced to that extent in the guideline. Then I think your second question was in terms of the decision-making process. Well, indeed, so we've received confirmation at the highest level of the European Commission that they will be shortening the decision-making, and this is the standing committee phase from 22 days to 10 days.
Thank you very much. Any other panelist wants to add something? Thomas is thinking about it.
No, it's on the first one, and it's and it goes back to Victoria's question that there are limits in terms of capacity here. We have to be honest about that. And as Saidi outlined, based on experience, we're convinced that the products that we bring in early will, the value from our support will be greatest within the SME area. At that stage, I actually envisage that it will be more regulatory support than scientific, in terms of scientific advice coordinator and in terms of regulatory, in terms of rapporteur support. So it is a very clear decision from our side to support the SME development plans early on, and then once you reach step 2. And remember, they also have to confirm moving from step 1 into step 2, and so there's no automatic move into step 2 and the appointment of rapporteur, etc. We've decided to focus the efforts in step 1, that I like to call it, for the SMEs.
Thank you very much, Thomas. Is there any more question? I don't see anyone raising their hands on my screen. If not, I want to thank everyone for attending this press conference. Just another reminder, please respect the embargo. All the material that we shared with you today and during the briefing are under embargo until 11 a.m. today. That is in about another 25 minutes. And if you have any further questions after that, please follow up with the press office as usual. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.